Hello, Dana Guitar Class. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm not going to cover any specific content that we're playing in class currently, but I'm going to talk about something that I became aware of this week that I will self-assign as a 0 stars review. Mr. Billy Goes Too Fast. So that was in reference to how quickly I move through material, as far as like the speeds that we play it, the warm-up routine, and it really got me thinking and about how I approach the class and what my role in the class is as the Dana guitar coach. And so I'm going to tell you some things about my background, and I'm going to beg you to hang in here with me and watch this video. I hope it won't be very long, but it might be. So I have a pretty varied background. I've played guitar for over 40 years. I started when I was in the 3rd grade. You can do the math and figure out how old I am. So I've been playing guitar for a really long time. I did take a break somewhere between 5th and 6th grade or 6th and 7th grade. I don't remember exactly which, but I wasn't really happy with my instructor. I didn't know how to effectively ask the question to get myself to what it was that I wanted to do on the guitar. And in my weekly lesson, we went through a very similar book to what we use in class as the lead guitar book, where it went string by string. Every other couple of weeks or something, I'd move along, hopefully, to a new string. And the material was not songs that I knew. And when they were songs that I was familiar with, it was just something like Aura Lee or Ode to Joy. Not really the thing that motivated me to play the guitar. When I was a kid, the songs on the radio were like Pink Floyd and Foreigner and Led Zeppelin and all these things that you guys might be aware of as classic, at least some of those acts, as classic rock music. And as a young person in the 3rd grade that really was interested in the guitar, I didn't know how to ask, either in a convincing way or a specific enough way, the question of my instructor that could really kind of forcefully steer him down the road that I was interested in. He was a young guy, had long hair, played an electric guitar. I started out with an acoustic guitar, not unlike the ones you have in class. I had steel strings, but still nothing special. And man, I couldn't crack that door open at all. I even went to the point one time of buying the sheet music of a song that I really liked on the radio at the time. It was called Renegade by a band called Styx. It was, oh my gosh, it was incredible. And I brought that in to say, can you show me the song, and put it on the stand, and it was the melody for the song and like the piano chords. It wasn't the guitar part really at all. And when it got to the place where the solo happened in the song, it just said ad lib guitar. I mean, that was the most gigantic jip of my entire young life, that I was thinking finally I was going to crack the case on how to play the music that I was interested in. And it said ad lib guitar. If you don't know what that means, it basically means that you just make up something. Ad-libbing. It's kind of how I do these videos. I have an idea about what I'm going to talk about, but ad-lib guitar, who knew? So anyway, I did those lessons for like a total of 2 years every week. It was kind of like my own personal misery. And I finally told my mom and dad, like, I just don't really want to go. I'm not interested. And they told me, Billy, if you don't do this, or if you quit, we'll never pay for another music lesson in your life. And I'm like, all right, you got a deal. And so I stopped taking lessons. Guitar went under the bed. And at this point, I did, it sort of went through the routine of begging my parents to get me an electric guitar, and I practiced a little bit more, but not enough to make a profound difference. And so the guitar's under the bed, and I think somewhere in the 7th or 8th grade, one of my friends who had been taking piano lessons all his life, and he seemed to be playing all this music that was very cool. A lot of songs by the Beatles. We were all Beatles fans when we were kids. And, he could play them on the piano. I just thought that was the neatest thing. I wish I could do that, on the guitar. That was really what I wanted. And one day I go over to his house and he picks up a guitar and he plays, And it's this song called Stray Cat Strut. And I was instantly boiling with jealousy inside. I had taken guitar lessons for 2 years, faithfully shown up every single week. And I couldn't play a single song in a way that it sounded like it did on the radio. And when I was young, we consumed music on the radio out of the car or whatever. We didn't have things like Spotify and YouTube to stream music. But it is hard to explain the feeling I had. I was impressed with what my friend had been able to do, and that he could play this. And I kind of knew some of the chords he was doing, but I was flabbergasted. And I said, Jeff, you got to show me how you did this. And so he shows me the chords to Stray Cat Strut, and it starts off with a C minor chord, then goes to a B flat major chord, and an A flat major chord, and an G major chord. And it's using a bar chord that would be the equivalent of a full F bar chord, which is pretty hard when you're a beginner. And the point of this is not to tell you how to play these chords right now, but it's to tell you about how I got to the point where I could play the guitar like I do. And I just love the guitar. After my friend Jeff showed me how to play that song, it gave me the ability to ask, like, what is the chord progression for a song? How do I get inside this song? How do I get in there just with just some little bit of knowledge to pry my way through it? And pretty much any person I knew that could play an instrument and guitar in particular, I was just like probably the most annoying kid ever. How do you do this? What are the chords to that? Can you show me that chord? Can you show me this? And, I just beg and plead. I mean, I was still pretty much a beginner, and I could only absorb so much, but I had these little 3x5 cards where I would write it down after I would talk to him. I would draw pictures of the chords, and a lot of visual stuff. And I'd go home and I'd turn on the radio and wait for that song to come on and either record it or just play along while it goes by. Or if it happened to be a song that I owned a record of, then I would play it along with the song. Any way that I could engage with it. So I went through my life, went through high school. I was not a particularly fantastic student at all. Never really felt like my academic performance lived up to my own sense of intellect. I felt like I was a pretty clever person. I always, participated in class. I just really wasn't all that into homework. And if you go back to my early guitar lessons, that's a common thread. Basically, I wasn't interested in what it was they were showing me. I wasn't interested in practicing it. I wasn't interested in doing the work because it didn't relate to me. So I finished high school and I went to Indiana University for a little while, and I didn't like that either. And through a series of other research and decisions and a teacher that I had, a guitar teacher that I hired myself at the time, I had a job. My parents didn't pay for any more lessons for me. And I went to this other instructor. His name was Pat Lentz, and Pat Lentz. And he went to a school in Los Angeles called Musicians Institute, and I ended up going out there, and it was basically a school that was really focused on like playing commercial music on electric guitars and basses and drums and things like that. So I studied music there and went through that program. It was pretty intense. I just merely showing up every day and having to play so much guitar, it was almost impossible to absorb it all. But I played a lot of guitar while I was there, and I'd played a lot of guitar leading up to it. I mean, my summers during high school when I didn't have a job, I spent pretty much 6, 8, 9, 10 hours a day playing guitar. I was a maniac. And then I went to school, kind of did the same thing, but in a more formalized setting. Played a ton of guitar, graduated from there, lived here for a while, ended up moving back to Louisville for a little bit, where I played in some bands and toured for a few years. I played many, many, many hundreds of gigs. Most of those gigs were in the range of 90 minutes to 3 hours, so it amounted to probably a few thousand hours on stage, and that's the real stuff. In all of that, I developed interests that were outside of music. And I'd been to school for music. I understood it pretty well, and I was getting more and more opportunities to understand it every day. But as I worked with electric guitars and electric guitar amplifiers, I became a little bit interested in electronics. And so I bought a book to learn about electronics, just basic stuff, very simple electronics projects, things like building power supplies and things to test cables and stuff like that. And I could use these with some of my guitar stuff, and that was kind of the goal. So I went along, and I realized while I was going through all of this stuff that somewhere, kind of by accident, because I wasn't a great student in high school, I had finally learned how to learn, and I didn't know that was something. I didn't know that was a thing. Each one of us learns differently. And the way we take in information and process it and absorb it and then try to access it and use it is different from individual to individual. It's not profoundly different, but it's different enough. And nowhere in my education career or my life in education did the concept ever get brought up to me in a profound enough way that I remember someone saying, you need to learn how to learn. Well, I'm here today to tell you, you need to learn how to learn. It's the way you solve problems is the way you need to set up experiences for you to encounter new information. And I'm going to give you an example. Probably at this point in your life, you're thinking about, like little electronic devices like phones, or maybe a keyboard for your computer, or a mouse, something with some RGB lighting in it. It could be a video game. It could be clothing. It could be makeup. It could be, just any type of decorative accessory and something that you like. And there is some way that you educate yourself on that. There's a way that you find out what it is that you want. There's a way that you make your decision. Sometimes your decision is, what decision did that person make? That's the decision I'll make. And for some things in life that can work, but it's a shortcut to making a decision, but it lacks an important element. And that important element is, why did that person make that decision? What informed their choice? So whether it's an RGB keyboard or a gaming mouse or some type of hair and makeup product or clothing or other accessories, skateboard wheels, whatever it is that you're into, that you mess around with, that is your hobby, there is a why behind every choice that you've seen someone else make. Sometimes that why is, it was available and it was inexpensive. Sometimes that why is, this particular company paid me to tell you it was good. There's a lot of that. And sometimes it's just flat out something is better and everyone knows it's better and everyone uses it. So it can either be a person discovered a unique thing and you found their choice and you chose that. But it's just important to know why things happen. And that is the place where you as an individual can solve that problem of how is it that I learn? I have a lot of different guitar students that I teach. Some of them, I have to write every single thing out and draw pictures, and I'm making all these highly illustrated transcriptions that have pictures of how you phrase things. And then some of them, and some of those people I also make videos for where it's all zoomed in on my hand. They look kind of similar to what you've seen in these classes, but a little less formalized. And then some of them are just pure auditory learners. We sit there and play it. I give them some tips about where they're supposed to put their fingers, but they kind of need to discover the sound that I'm making through their own ears and into their hands. And it's a totally valid way to learn. Probably one of my best students right now learns like that. It's, like I could be making great videos for that kid because we're working on a lot of great songs, but he doesn't need them, so I'm not motivated to make them. So I'm going to go back to the Mr. Billy Goes Too Fast. Part of the reason I go fast in the warm-ups is to save time. And for the majority of the class, right now, they know the exercises pretty well. So if we're playing the 5... playing that exercise, you probably know it. Something makes me think this guitar isn't in standard tuning. It might be, I'm not sure. It just sounds so different than doing it on an acoustic guitar. But where was I? So I go through these exercises kind of quickly. And, frankly, it's just to get the majority of the class warmed up. I want them to try to go faster, because by going faster, you may make some mistakes, but playing warm-ups perfectly every time is not exactly warming up. If you were to warm up in gym by simply only walking, you wouldn't really get warmed up. You walk down the hall every day. Are you warmed up when you get to your next class? Probably not. However, there is a way that you can take control of the information that I am presenting in class. For example, the warm-up. If you are watching this on YouTube and you're watching it on a computer, down over here somewhere, there's a gear. Or is it down over here? I can never keep it straight. I think it's down over here if I'm looking at myself. Yeah, down over here. And there's a gear. And if you click on that gear, you will see a playback speed option, and it will be defaulted to normal. But you can put it on 0.75, which means it will happen 25% slower than normal speed. I think you can hit 0.50 and probably 0.25. 0.25 super slow, and I will talk like anyway. If 0.75 or 0.50 or 0.5 are not appropriate for you, there's a button, there's a link that says custom, and I think there you can go in increments of 5%. Slow them down. You have control. You need to figure out how you learn. I want to help you as much as possible, but I can't do all of the work for you. But I am trying to tell you what some of the work is. Some of the work, and this is going to cover your entire life in all education, in all jobs, and practically everything you do. You're going to have to figure out how you learn. The way I figured out how I learned is that I really liked, the things I really liked, I learned. I read what I needed to read. I watched what I needed to watch. I asked questions of people that might have the answer, and I collected that information and began to assimilate it, and I began to assimilate it by trying it out. And it's going to be kind of the same process for anyone, that what I just described, but the methods of collecting that information are going to vary. One thing I've noticed in my adult life is I am a pretty effective Google question asker. If I need to know something, I can usually formulate a simple question to ask in a Google search and get very close to the answer that I'm looking for. And if I don't, I usually get enough of a clue how I can refine what it is that I'm asking, and get a more specific answer. It doesn't always work, and I can't always come up with the question. And sometimes the words are so general and vague that it's really difficult. It gets really difficult to search, or it might be similar to another field or term, and it just gets super confusing. But that's part of that learning how to learn. From there, you just have to navigate your way through, this specific term or that specific term. And Google even has like some ways of filtering and omitting certain results. I tend not to use those much. Some people are way better at it than I am. I just haven't been motivated to learn it. My own searching queries are effective. I thought I might play some electric guitar, but I don't think that's going to happen. I'm just sitting here as a prop to lean on. I'm not blaming anyone but myself on a 0 stars review. Mr. Billy goes too fast. But I'm also going to own it. I'm going the speed that I'm going in class to challenge the middle up. If you are not in the middle, the way you get there is to put some time in and figure out how you learn. If you figure out how to play the guitar, it's a pretty complicated instrument. Well, maybe that's not the best way to put it. It's a pretty dynamic instrument in the way that you operate it. And the thinking that you will cultivate, the thought processes that you'll cultivate by learning how to play the guitar and acquiring knowledge about how to play the guitar, it has a lot of travel. I've never had a single electronics or electronic engineering class in my life, and I simply figured out electronics and electrical concepts on my own and applied them into the fields of music and motor control technologies. I've built parade floats for Disneyland and for an amusement park in South Korea called Lotte World. I've built all kinds of crazy electronic contraptions for carnivals and amusement parks of all kinds in my life, just as a sideline, because I could. I figured out how to build like these little logical circuits and used relays and switches and sensors of different types, and it would automate these mechanical objects. I just figured it out. I don't really think I'm a genius, I'm clever, resourceful, but mostly I learned how to learn. And if there was a topic I needed to know about, I had a way in. And you guys are young, and this concept of learning how to learn, probably, I don't think it's been introduced to you at any point in your education so far. And not everybody's even going to make it this far into this video. But you need to learn how to learn. You need to learn how you learn. And no teacher can teach you. I can't teach you. But it is the most important thing you'll figure out in your life. And the sooner you figure it out, the easier the rest of it will be. I wish I would have figured it out 10 years earlier than I did. I would have been a much better student in high school. But I am the person that I am. I have an interesting life. And I've pretty much always done things that I want to do, with intervals of occasionally working for other people. But I've done some interesting stuff. And I can't tell you how to invest your money in the stock market or anything like that. That's somebody else's journey. But mine's definitely been figuring out how to make music, how to make technology work for me, And I don't know, it's just allowed me to be creative my entire life. And I'll keep being creative. Maybe you don't feel like you're a very, very creative person, but it's inside of everybody. You just need to be a little bit patient in figuring out how it is that you learn. So go to whatever hobby, whatever video game it is. I don't know. It's unimaginable all the things that young people can be into. There's so many different little areas. But learn how to learn. If you want to talk to me about it, I'll talk to you about it. I might be able to ask you questions, and your answers may tip you off into how you were successful at something. And the one thing about learning stuff is that it takes time, and you have to make mistakes. You have to recognize those mistakes and then correct them. But the mistakes are so important. The Google searches that don't yield the results you want tell you more about how to search the next time. And you just have to keep on trying. And you can use that tool of learning how to learn to solve practically anything in your life. You may find at some point that best solution is to pay someone who has a better understanding of whatever topic it is that you're trying to learn about to either teach you or do the work for you. It happens every day in life. The mechanics that work on our cars, the doctors that treat our illnesses, the plumbers and construction workers who fix our homes and that kind of thing. There's not time to do everything, but you should make the time to learn how to learn. All right. I don't know. I should play guitar or something. I set up for electric guitar just to do something different. Okay, there's like 40 odd years of guitar playing and some clumsy blues. Catch you later.